Welcome to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast. This is the podcast dedicated to people who want to speak more as a way to build their income and grow their business. Well, welcome everyone to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast. I'm Jane Atkinson, your host and the founder of the Wealthy Speaker University. Now, today's show is brought to you by the Wealthy Speaker Daily Success Planner and Journal. Some of you have heard me talking about this before. It is my favorite. You know, we're not supposed to have a favorite child, but I do. And it's this journal. It's a tool that my clients are using every single day, and they're getting great results because it's helping them focus every day towards what it is that they want. Every morning, you're setting your intention, what gives you confidence. It's really allowing you to map out your gratitude and your daily to-dos. And throughout the journal, there's a whole bunch of other elements that allow you to really stay focused and on track in your business. Now, if you're interested in getting our special pricing on the journal, hop on over to speakerlauncher.com and click on the bookstore, and the journal will be at the top of that page. So today we are talking about really standing tall in your power and building your business while avoiding the imposter syndrome that I know sometimes we can feel. Our guest expert is Nicole Jansen. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you, Jane. I'm excited to be here. And you're such an awesome host. Oh my gosh, I'm listening to you. I'm like, you're so good.
Oh, well, let me share with everybody a little snippet of your bio, and then I'm going to get you to tell us more about yourself. Over the past 30 years, Nicole has empowered thousands of entrepreneurs to transform their ideas into highly profitable and rewarding businesses. Her clients span 5 continents and range from startup entrepreneurs to industry leaders looking to expand and take their business to the next level and beyond. A year or so ago, Nicole, I was so fortunate to actually be on your podcast, and it is called The Leaders of Transformation. Now, Nicole, tell us, you're a speaker as well, and you're doing podcasting. Tell us how you fell into all of this.
Well, actually, I did exactly that. I fell into it through actually my parents. Many years ago, my parents had a business where we were in personal development. I started actually listening to tapes back when they had tapes. And I was 7 years old, and I ended up going to seminars. I actually grew up, I would say, at seminars and conventions. And so it was a natural progression for me to start my own business and to start doing presentations. Actually, the first presentation, well, it was kind of an impromptu presentation. Somebody asked me up on stage talking about being a second generation entrepreneur. And his questioning was like, he was asking me these, respectfully, really dumb questions.
Oh.
He didn't really know what he was like. He was just, hey, like it was just young kind of simple questions. And I was like, do you mind if I just kind of go with this? And he said, sure. And I don't know how long I went, but maybe 20, 30 minutes, something like that. And everybody was so captivated by it. And it was at that moment where I got the bug. Mm-hmm. And I thought, wow, I just all of a sudden, it's like you probably have those moments like you look out and everybody is captivated.
Yeah. There you got it.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like a drug. And once you get a little taste of the drug, it's like, oh, I want some more of that. Or it could be that adulation that people give you when they come up to you afterwards, or it could be the standing ovation. I mean, really, I think a lot of people get it. Some people just love standing up on stage in front of people.
Yeah, I'm not one of those people, actually. I say there's 2 types of speakers. Some people who, they love that adulation. They love to be seen as awesome. People coming up to them afterwards, oh my gosh, you're so awesome. I'm more of the speaker that I really do like to focus on my audience, and I like it when my audience comes up and says that they feel good about themselves. And I'm not saying that it has to be an either or, but that I tend to go that direction. It's just I'm not naturally, although that would surprise some people to hear that who know me, but I'm not naturally an extrovert. I'm more of an introverted person, but I get up on stage because of the impact that I can have. It can have a greater impact, reach more people. Yeah,
You know,
what are the,
I actually think we come from exactly the same place on that. Maybe that's why we get along. I was always behind the scenes, pushing my speakers out into the spotlight. And at some point, I realized I need to do that for myself and just kind of take center stage. And I think what we're talking about here is kind of what your intention is. And I think what might undermine that intention of going out and having that ripple effect and doing good work in the world is this kind of imposter syndrome that we're here to talk about today. Wouldn't you agree?
yes, absolutely. Goes right into that.
Yeah. So for you, not necessarily, hey, ta-da, here I am, it's not necessarily about that, but you want to do good work in the world. And I think that
Yes.
most of our listeners would agree that they want to do good work in the world as well. But sometimes what can happen is this thing we call the imposter syndrome. Where do you think that comes from? Like, what is going on with that, Nicole?
Well, yeah, I think that, and I can only talk from my own personal experience on this, is when I had there was this feeling like I was, people were saying to me, like you said, I'm in the back of, most of the time pushing other people out into the front, center stage. And then there was this time when it was my time to be up there.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like, who am I to be on this stage? Who am I? What do I have to share? And I think it comes from a, yes, mindset, but it's this fear that maybe we don't know enough to be able to share with somebody else. Like we're feeling like, it's this, I think it comes from many of us growing up and saying like, who are you to be, we're just simple people, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're just this, we're average people. I'm nothing special. How many times have you heard somebody say that? Oh, I'm nothing special. My story is nothing special. I mean, other people have great stories, and we oftentimes will compare ourselves to others, and we'll see those highlight reels that, others show on social media or on stage as they're speaking, and you're like, wow, they're so great. They're so polished. Who am I to even to put myself out there like that? And I also think there's also a fear of being transparent, that if I show myself, and I know this for myself, this was really deep. It's like, if I show who I really am, would they even want to hear from me? Like after you go through the ups and downs of life, right? And
Right.
and you see these other speakers, and it's like, wow, it just looks like they've got it all together.
Mm-hmm.
And if they only knew, that I've had all these ups and downs in my life, they wouldn't want to listen to me, which is, of course, the total opposite. I mean, that's what people gravitate to.
Right. And I think that we have to acknowledge that authenticity is the new, I don't know, it's like a credibility builder. I don't know what
Yes.
I don't know what that meme should be. I haven't thought it through, but authenticity is the new what? Fill in the blank. What?
Yeah, I
Like a
think
currency almost.
yes, that's a great way of putting it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's so many of us that have, like I said, I mean, I grew up in conventions and seminars. I figured it out a few years back how many live speakers I had seen. I had seen over 7,000 speakers live and in person. That's not tapes, CDs,
Wow.
audio. And you hear enough people, not that you need to hear that many to get to this point, but there was a point where you just go, I just want it real. And that again comes back to what I was saying is, otherwise, how can I relate? How can I feel like, wow, you know what, you're amazing and I can do this too. And so am I, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think people are tired of hearing people just sharing their highlight reel. We see that on social media too. I mean, it's like people are saying, I want to know, you don't have to, there's not I'm not talking about the victim mentality, right? Of poor me. These are all the things hard, how I've been hard done by and all that. I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about sharing the struggles and the solutions of how you've gotten out of that. I think people are really looking for that so that it can encourage them, especially in a time right now when there's so much uncertainty, so much anxiety, and people are saying, I really want to do good in the world, like you say,
Mm-hmm.
but I need, can I do it? Is it worth it? Do I have what it takes to do that? And so, yeah, I think people, and of course, we've seen so many fall from grace over the last number of years. People that were idols, were heroes that have fallen from grace, and people are saying, "Look, I just want to know: are you the same on stage as off
Oh
stage as you are
boy.
on stage?"
These 700 people that you have seen speak, I would bet that there have been people that you have met aside from that. And certainly some of my heroes fell off their what do we put them up on a pedestal?
Pedestal.
Yeah,
Mhm.
some of my heroes have fallen off with a big bang, with a big thump.
Yeah.
Has that ever happened to you where people were somewhat incongruent with their message?
Oh, very much so. I got to the point that I actually said to my mom, we were at an event together, and I said, God, sometimes I just feel like I could be ignorant again, and
Mm,
not see
yeah.
when they flip the switch. When you
Yep.
see a speaker and you're like, oh, they're flicking the switch, they're putting it on. I
Hmm.
can tell. And I just was like, wow, I just wish I could hear their message and not hear all of the backstory to it. And yeah, it has happened, unfortunately, many times. And it's obviously there's no judgment. People go through stuff.
Yeah.
But with that, yes, I think it's important that we be honest, and we don't create a false perception of who we are,
Yes.
because people don't relate to that. I mean,
No.
it doesn't build their confidence. 'Cause
S-
it's something that's like the model that has been photoshopped,
Yeah. Yeah.
and women are
Airbrush.
like, oh, like airbrushed,
Yeah,
and
exactly. So maybe there's something about being on stage. It's so true. I lived in Dallas for 6 years and worked under the roof of a speakers bureau, and I became so jaded. And I actually moved physically back to Canada and tried to scrape some of that off. And it's taken a while. And now when I go to, say, the National Speakers Association conferences or my Canadian version of those CAPs, I really try to walk in just with that open idea that everybody is there to give us something good, and I'm really trying not to go in with those jaded blinders on. Maybe that's a challenge for all of us. Is that next time we go and see a speaker, that we just kind of take off the jadedness because that's what can happen after a while, don't you think?
absolutely. And I think that's where empathy comes in. And when we see that, people are trying to do their best. And like
Hmm.
you said in the beginning, we all just really want to do good.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm sure there has been people that have heard me speak that, they have their own judgments. Of course, they're filtering it. We're all filtering it through our life experience.
Hmm.
And, and people have come up to me and, have wanted to see, am I really off stage the same as I am on stage? I had a friend of mine I did a workshop with, and somebody came up to her and said, like, are you really that, you know, connected? Are you really that authentic? Are you really, and was asking her, like really challenging her. And I
Mm.
think that, we just have to realize that everybody's doing their best. And you know what, you absolutely, even those speakers, because I did get jaded for a little while there and I had to check myself,
Hmm.
and I'm like, I doesn't matter. Ultimately, I can get something out of, if I look for it, I can get something out of every presentation, every
Exactly.
speaker. I remember hearing Harv Eker for the first time
Hmm.
in Toronto, because I'm
Hmm.
Canadian and I was
Yay.
living in Toronto still at that time. And a friend of mine invited me to this Saturday night a seminar, and never heard of this guy. It was back in, I think, 2005, and his book had actually just come out. The Millionaire Mind had just come out that week. And so I come into this room and I'm listening to him, and he's loud, and the speakers are like right next to us. So it's like reverberating in my ears. And I was sitting there listening to him, and I'm going, oh my gosh, there's Tony Robbins, that's Blair Singer, that's Tom
Mhm.
Peters. And all of a sudden I was like, wait a second, wait. Did I come here tonight on a Saturday night to identify all the things that I already know? Or am I coming here to learn new distinctions? Am I coming to learn something new? And, or be reminded of something, right? And I shifted in that moment, and that reticular activating system in our brains kicked in for me. And all of a sudden his speech became so rich and so authentic because of the way that I was looking at, and what I was listening for, rather than, oh, he sounds like so-and-so. Oh, he got that from so-and-so, or he learned that from this person, and so it's through our listening. I mean, it makes a big difference.
So showing up really with that beginner mind, love it. So, okay, so we're the ones stepping out onto the stage. And of course, we need to stand tall in kind of who we are and feel credible. How do we balance being credible with being authentic?
Well, I think it comes back to focusing on number one, the real results that you create for people, not, being truthful about that. I mean, we, as a coach of entrepreneurs and some people starting out, some people taking their business to the next level, we've all created some level of success. And certainly if you're going to be out there speaking in front of an audience, you will have created a certain measure of success. And that's why you're an authority, that somebody has actually invited you in, or you're doing your event. And so to speak to those results, to not embellish them, but to speak to because people know the difference. And when you really focus on the real results, there's a congruence about when you're sharing that message, how it actually gets delivered. You own it. And so I think that's really important, is being authentic with who you are and what you've accomplished. And I think that builds your credibility. So the other side of this, as I was mentioning a few minutes ago, some people think authenticity, or as they're testing the waters, think that is sharing all their dirty laundry. Right? It's not about that, because whenever I share a story, whether I'm speaking on a stage, and this goes for anything, right? Even coaching somebody, when I share stories, it's only because of the benefit of the audience. It's for their benefit. I've already heard my story. I don't need to hear it again.
Right.
And I think that's really important for new speakers to realize, is that every story, as you're shaping your story, and you know this because you're the expert in helping people to shape their messages and build their speaker business, is to only share the stories that are relevant to the audience. So you're being authentic and saying, here are the experiences that I've gone through. Here's the ups, the downs, and all of that. But it's but you're bringing the audience into that story. And so you're building credibility from that, rather than saying, oh, look how hard I had it. And then people feel sorry for you. So that's one element to it. And I think that I think it happens even before then, when you are presenting yourself. Let's say, for example, someone who wants to be a conference speaker, wants to get hired by someone else to come in and speak at their event. I think what's important is the professionalism, where how you show up right from the beginning can add your credibility, right? Even if you're fairly new as a speaker, but how you do anything is how you do everything. And when you show up right from the beginning, and you're professional and you're trustworthy and you do what you say and you are clear on the results that you can create for people, you're not embellishing, but you're also not downplaying it. I think that really adds to the credibility. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong. As I said, you're the expert in this, but that has been my experience, because I come across congruent. And when I'm congruent, then it's like I'm aligned with my message, and it clicks. People go, yeah, that resonates with me.
Was there a moment in your life where you just went, oh, okay, I'm getting this balance of credibility with authenticity. I'm getting this lesson now?
Yeah, I've had a few lessons over. Actually, for me, there was a point where I was working with an individual who is an amazing communicator, and I was delivering some of his content. And what I realized in the beginning, as I started to share it in small workshops and so forth, I realized that I still didn't own it.
Oh.
Right? So if you're going to deliver content, you got to make sure that you own it. That's why, going through the material again and again, preparing yourself, I think is really important. Yeah, for me, that was really, there was a point where I started to prepare and I practiced and practiced. I owned a franchise, so it was a system. It was the intellectual property that I had purchased, right?
Okay.
And so I was delivering this, but all of a sudden there was this moment when it wasn't fully clicking.
Mm-hmm.
And then at one point I was doing this seminar and it clicked. It wasn't about the script or the preparation. All that had been done. And I was just fully present with the audience. And I was just sharing from my heart what, for them, what this would mean for them and the impact of this, how this relates to their life and what they want to create. And it was one of those moments where it was like, oh my gosh, like it just connected so well and people were so captivated. It was like you could hear a pin drop in the room.
That
was powerful.
That might be the moment when your material goes from in your head to in your bones. That's a coaching term from CTI. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but in your bones means that you've already done all of the prep work. You know your material. And that's where that in the bones thing, your stuff so well that it feels like it's in your bones. And then you just show up and you're there real in front of them having a conversation with them. And it just flows like a ping pong match back and forth between you and the audience. It's kind of cool, isn't it?
Oh, it's amazing. I don't know that there's too many feelings that are like that awesome when you can connect. And I think that's our human experience. We want to connect with people on that level. And to be able to do that was extraordinary. And people respond to that. I know that even in that room, I know one of the things that, we want to make a lasting impact, and we want people to want to take it to that next step. Even in that workshop, that's what clicked for me as well, was that I knew that it had connected because of the conversations that I had afterwards with people. Like I knew that it really, really landed. And you're right. That's where it's in your bones. And one of the greatest skills that I think that if I could teach anyone is the ability to be present.
Good one.
To get it's not about you anymore. Right? It's like you're so clear, you can be with your audience. And this goes for one-on-one as well. Just the ability to be present with another person, and not be thinking about what you're going to say next. You're just like fully there with them.
And in an audience situation, I think that can be what doesn't go well, is when you're so worried. Okay, so let's say, you're gonna hire a film crew and come in and capture this presentation, and you're prepare, and you do it all, and then in the moment, you're not really present with the audience because you're so worried about the darn film crew. That's the type of thing that you don't think about ahead of time. So we talk about, okay, do all your homework ahead of time and have everything prepared, and then just show up and be present for that audience. And the same thing goes for a high stakes speech. Do
Absolutely.
all the work on the back end, but then just show up and be present and have a conversation, because the more in your head you are, the less present you are likely.
Well, and if you're so worried about logistics, that context needs to be set up front, and you need a team that you can then trust that they're going to do what they need to do. It's so interesting as human beings. It's almost like I think it's like almost an arrogance, that like we feel like we have to control everything.
Yes.
Look, if you hired the experts, I should say, to do the film, like the film crew, and you did your due diligence on them, they're going to know how to do it.
Just,
Yeah,
just trust, and
and
if
that's
they don't, then there's nothing you can do about it while you're on the platform anyway.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's like I noticed for myself is there were times where I felt even uncomfortable on stage because I was worried about how do I look? Do I feel okay?
Mm-hmm.
Do my clothes look okay? And all this stuff. And as soon as you're in that, you're disconnected from the audience, as you know, right?
Yeah.
And that's the most. I've had people say, how do you get up there and you're so comfortable? And I will say this, I am not the perfectly polished speaker.
Mm-hmm.
I make mistakes. Sometimes I'll go on a little tangent, short ones, of course, like stay on focus, but I'm not perfect. And I had somebody that was a mentor to me that was one of those polished speakers. And he said to me all of a sudden, he goes, you know what? I get it. And I said, what? And he was, I was delivering, I was presenting, we were doing in a simulation, like it was in a practice, but I was doing it. And he's like, there was a small audience there, a group of us. And he went, people like you. And I went, is that like a bad thing or is that a good thing? But his point is that even though you're not perfect in your, in every deliver, like all the little elements of delivery, but people like you, they connect with you. And it's like, because I'm real.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be perfect like that. And you know what? It's like the film crew. Look, if whatever you're wearing is what you're wearing, whatever your hair looks like in that moment is what it looks like. So you're not going to be able to do anything up there anyway. That's the kind of stuff that you prepare ahead of time. So then when you're up on stage, stage in front of an audience, that's where you can forget yourself. And I always just remind myself, Nicole, this is not about you. This has nothing to do with you. And that's why coming back to what we were starting off with in the beginning is not looking for those accolades. It just gave me that freedom and saying, I'm not actually worried about people coming up and saying, Nicole, you're so awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I want them to say, wow, I feel awesome. That's and so does it matter, whether my hair is out of place or whether this is, like it doesn't matter at that point. It's all about connecting to the audience. And that actually gave me a peace and a freedom to be myself up there.
Oh, I wish I had this conversation with you a month ago. I actually just did a presentation where the venue took me by surprise. I hadn't asked enough questions on the front end to find out where I was speaking. And when we walked in, it wasn't a professional setting. It was like somebody who was had a condo in this apartment building. It was a common room for an apartment building. So a big, beautiful space. But picture, a pool table and a TV and a kitchen area and things like that. And not really any chairs set up for a conference situation. It was more long tables and, sofas and things like that. And then there was a struggle with the technology. And then there was a struggle with my slides being seen because there was so much light coming into this room. And had I been a pro, I mean, this is what we get sometimes, right? And I do not fault the people. It's a beautiful space. I just wasn't prepared for it. And so I didn't handle it as well. And what I wish I would have done is a couple of minutes before just kind of stepped out of the room and reminded myself, I am there to serve this audience and this group of people who came here today to see, and done my mantra. Be humble, be kind, be sharp. That's my normal mantra. I wish I would have gotten out of the kind of the chaos of the preparation into my own normal space of being in service to them. And I didn't. And I would say it went okay. People who were there said, oh, I took lots and lots of notes, but I didn't feel good about it. And I wish you and I would have had this conversation first so that I could have just, flip that switch. We have to be able to flip a switch when things aren't going exactly as planned.
Oh, I'm there, right there with you. Oh my gosh. I've had those presentations where like the logistics, you go into a room, the lighting's off and all this stuff. And yeah, it's so easy, even as a pro, as somebody that like you, I mean, even coming on so here's me being authentic. Even coming on to this podcast, I was like, Nicole, who are you to get on here and talk about this? And I'm like, well, because I've done a lot of presentation, but it's still that little voice. It's like, who are you? And it's that little doubt. It's those little voices, that inner dialogue. Sometimes it creeps in at the inopportune moments and says, oh my God, it's the same one. It's like that, worry about this and worry about that. And it's got to be perfect. And whenever I check myself, even in that moment, and I go, hang on, wait a second.
Yep.
This isn't about, that's why that became my quote unquote mantra for me. It was like, this isn't about me. Just forget, it's not about me. It's all about them. And I'm like, oh, right. Yeah, because I had one time I had like
serve. I'm here to serve. Yep.
I'm here to serve. Exactly. I had a room one point. It was in Toronto again, and I was at this conference, and there was like the room was packed full, 350 people. They were expecting a lot less because they had all these breakouts, but everybody ended up in my room, and so they were like lined up around the walls and everything, and the lighting was horrible. The sound was horrible. They couldn't hear it in the back and all this stuff, and I'm like, oh my gosh, right? And so I just went, okay, well, this is what we've got, right? So how can we make the best of it and have fun with it? And people loved it, and they appreciate it because I acknowledge it. That's the other thing is, talking about being authentic, is as is it. If there's something not working, don't excuse it. Don't make, some people make excuses for it or blame somebody else. All that, when you blame, when you justify, when you pretend like it's not happening. How many times have we ever heard a speaker that is losing their audience and they just talk louder thinking that's going to work?
Right.
It's like, look, if you feel like your audience is disconnected or something's going on or it's hot in the room or it's cold, like I just check in. I'm known to do that. Sometimes I'll be like, are you guys okay?
Yeah.
And it's real serious. And I'm like, oh, no, this is good. I love it. Okay, I'm just checking,
Yeah.
And it's just being real, even about what's going on around you. And it just makes so much, it's like it eases that pressure for yourself and it eases the pressure for the room because it's like, well, you know what? Isn't this life? Isn't this what happens all the time? You end up in a situation where technology doesn't happen. I mean, my dad at one point was doing a presentation to about 500 people and the fire alarm went off and it went off and then it went, it was like on and off for about a good hour. And he's such a character. And actually I learned so much from him about just having fun on stage. And he literally continued his presentation because they said it was a false alarm, but they had to fix it in the hotel. They had to, sort it out. And so literally he would do the presentation and then the fire alarm would come on and go beep, 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 beep. And he would stop and then it would turn off and they'd be like, okay. And, and people loved it. It was hilarious. They thought it was the most, interesting presentation because he just had fun with it.
Rolled with
and
it.
The energy was like through the roof. They just had such a ball. So yeah, it's all about that. What we're talking about is being authentic, not trying to pretend. The imposter syndrome comes in when we try to pretend to be something that we're not.
Right.
Or that we're afraid, or like, again, I was saying with that little voice sometimes actually comes in and says, oh, who are you to do this? Like,
I have a lot of clients who have said that to themselves. I don't have a big climbing Mount Everest story. I haven't survived, this horrific thing. And I think that, we can give them some tips for shoring up their confidence because, everybody has that. It could be considered the little green man or the gremlin. Rick Carson has a great book called Taming Your Gremlin. What would be some tips that we could share to help people shore up their confidence?
Well, you just mentioned a great book. Here's another one. Blair Singer wrote a book called Little Voice Mastery. Ooh. And it's mastering the little voice in your head, winning the war between your ears. Very, very powerful. The second half of the book, he actually lists 21 techniques. The first part is setting it up and explaining it and how it relates to your confidence. But the second half actually has 21 techniques in there. Fantastic.
Love
techniques
it.
to be able to just really turn your brain around in 30 seconds. One of the things that, I don't know, you may have heard this, I certainly have heard this, is don't read your press clippings. Like that was always a statement of, it's like, don't get too big on yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, on the flip side of that is don't think so low of yourself that you haven't actually made a difference. So what I encourage people to do is to read first of all, get client testimonials, right?
Yep.
And see the impact. And then you know what? When you feel like that, go back and read them.
Yeah.
Remind yourself.
Keep like an Attaboy file or an Attagirl file that allows you to. I have one on my bulletin board for a few years that was from, the president of our national association. He said, Jane, after you left, he just wrote me a little nice, beautiful little email. Jane, after you left our conference, I heard your name mentioned in every seminar room that I went into at the breakout sessions. And so every time I would need a little boost, I would just read this email over again. Oh yeah, that's right. Okay, good. Things are working. And so you can take a copy of the letters or the emails and put them in the file so that you can have a place to go when your confidence wanes. What else can we do?
Absolutely. And I think the second thing would be not in this order, but the other thing I would encourage you to do is to know your strengths. I'm a big believer in playing to your strengths. When you're playing to your strengths, you're going to be more confident, and because it's the area, it's your zone, it's your genius, or as Dan Sullivan would call it, your unique ability. When you're living in that unique ability, you're going to be more confident. And it's like when you go up on stage and you're like, I know this stuff. Like this is my sweet spot. This is what I was, and even reminding yourself, and this is what I was born to do. Like I don't need to memorize these things, it's like, this is who I am. Another one is, focusing on your audience. We talked about that. And, even just grounding yourself, being prepared in your presentation, but then being prepared mentally and emotionally yourself is being grounded. Like you have your mantra, something that centers you on what am I doing? Because sometimes, we're the ones that are setting up the room. We love to have a team, but I don't know about you. I've been in situations where I was like chief cook and bottle washer,
right,
setting up tables and doing all that stuff, or somebody, volunteers that didn't show up and people are jumping in, whatever, and having to do all that. But it's after all of that is said and done, you leave yourself a few minutes to center yourself. If you got to go into the bathroom, one of the other things actually, which is in his book, Blair's book there that was talking about Little Voice Mastery, talks about this bragging exercise, is even just bragging yourself and just feeling your energy expand before you go on stage. So you're feeling big, you're feeling powerful. Get it in your body, in your bones. It's more, it's like in your muscles. It's in every aspect. Yes.
Stand up and do the Superman pose, before you go on stage. I think that one actually, there's something really, kinesthetic about that really, really works for people. I think there's a combination. I love that little mantra that I do: be humble, be kind, be sharp. And being sharp is really important to me, because if I can't sometimes it depends. At my age, 53, you never kind of know what your mental status is going to be. So that's kind of trying to hike me into top gear in terms of the mental sharpness. But doing that Superman pose, I think, is just fantastic. It really works.
And for me, the last and very almost probably the most important thing is, and it comes back to what you were saying even in your mantra, is Ormans Service, right? So I literally, and that's just me. Some people relate to this, some people may not. But I literally then turn it over and I'm like, God, just speak through me. Just, you know what? You've got the words. You know exactly what's in the hearts and minds of every single person in that audience. and I'm here to serve. And so just speak through me, whether that's spirit, divine, whatever, higher being, whatever you
Whatever
want to
you
call it.
believe in. Yeah, for
Just
sure.
it's like, just speak through me, because then I can confidently know I'm not out there all alone.
Hmm.
It's not me trying to be smart and witty, and and it's being present, and it's just letting it flow right through me.
That's nice. That is why every day during our morning ritual, using the Wealthy Speaker Daily Success Planner and Journal, there's a question there right after we set our intention for the day. We ask ourselves, what do I have going for me? And when you have to write it down every single day, and then it stretches your mind to actually go to places that you haven't gone yet. It's like being grateful for things that you haven't really thought of being grateful for yet. You get down to the most minute details. Sometimes I'm grateful for my fingers so that I can type, and my eyes so that I can see the screen. There's so much there in terms of your own confidence builders too, things that you just don't think of on a regular daily basis. So that's why we prompt people to think about, what do I have going for me? Build your confidence every single day. That's kind of cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. And of course, I'm going to do a plug, because your book, The Wealthy Speaker 2.0, which I read a number of years ago, fantastic. I
Oh,
mean, you have
thank you.
so much. Talk about building confidence in people. I mean, seriously, you've got it laid out there. You don't there's no need for somebody to have to go through the jungle on their own trying to figure out how to do this. You've laid it all out right so clearly for them. And then with your journal to complement that, I think is a brilliant combination. And gratitude, oh my gosh. So you walk out there, you are expanded, you're feeling abundant, you're feeling there's so much to be grateful for. That's, to me, is all part of the, being
Hmm.
grounded, and you're prepared and you're ready to serve. And it's all about the audience.
Well, you nailed something a minute ago, talking about how we kind of map out in the book everything for people. What I think actually gives you confidence is clarity.
Yes.
And so that's always the goal, is to know that you know. You know that you
Yes.
know what you're selling. And there are people who go out and stand on stage and they're giving presentation number 1 of 7.
Yeah.
And I would say, how can you have the same level of confidence about all 7 of those presentations? I mean, I think if you just dive deep on 1 or 2 topics, or even 3, you are going to feel more confident in the presentation because you've taken this deep dive, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it comes back to that. Yeah. If you don't own it yourself, or you're trying to just get through it and cram the information in, you're not going to be as confident. Clarity leads to power. I totally agree with what you just said there. Clarity leads to confidence.
Hmm.
It, what are we not confident at? We're on stage, and let's say we're not feeling so confident. I just think about, like, what are the things that we are not confident about? Our presentation, ourself, how we look, our logistics. Like, we've covered them all, right?
Hmm.
It's like, how do you look at that and saying, even somebody maybe that's listening and saying, I don't feel confident, just check in and ask yourself, what are you not confident about?
Right. Which part is it?
Yeah. And then deal with it
Mm.
before you get on stage.
Yeah.
Tip. before
Maybe
before you get up there.
Maybe you feel like you need a makeover. And what's really funny? The day after I did my presentation, where I was kind of shook up,
Mhm.
I did another one in another city, and I actually dressed in the most comfortable clothing I could think of, yet being professional, but really it wasn't like, hey, I wasn't showing up looking quite as chic as I might have on another day, because I really just wanted to be in my comfort zone. It was almost like I wanted to put on my slippers and sweatpants and show up at this presentation. And so I went and I just, walked into a beautiful meeting room, and everything went swimmingly well. And then afterwards, someone came up and gave me her card. She was an image expert. She wanted to do a makeover on me, and I'm like, oh, that's so sweet. But I get where you're coming from because you're right. I didn't really try that hard today, but it was all in the name of comfort. And so I'm hoping that things shone through despite my not really dressing my best. And you know what? I bet a lot of people look at me and think, wow, that girl could use a makeover. My goal is to just feel as good as humanly possible. And
Yeah.
some days I do it, and I've got to tell you, some days I don't. This is funny. One of my favorite Amy Porterfield episodes was about why she didn't want to be, this was on her podcast, why she didn't want to be on video. And in the podcast description, hint, it's my weight. And weight is a thing for me that can undermine my confidence stepping out onto stage because I feel like I should have it all together. And I don't. And I struggle with it, and I will likely continue to struggle for the next 20 years. I'm really trying to just get okay with it. I really just want to be good with whatever's going on. Love me at this weight, love me at 20 pounds less. I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that self-worth is such a big issue, and it's such a big element to this. For me, it's my skin. I've had, horrible skin issues over the years for whatever reason. And, it actually that has been my thing about not getting up on in front of a camera because I look and I go, oh God, and I critique myself. And then of course I have to remind myself, Nicole, this isn't about you. And people are probably not paying attention to it as much as I am. And yet it's that thing that, we've got to love ourselves. When I got to the point, at one point it was so bad that I literally didn't want to go to the store that day because it was so horrible.
Wow.
And I was out of groceries, and I needed something, and I was like, I don't want to go out there. And I thought, this is nuts. Like, this is so ridiculous. I'm going to starve because I am worried about what other people think of me.
Wow.
And I came up with this saying, and I said, if you don't like it, don't look.
Yeah.
And it wasn't about, it wasn't being rude. It was just, I want to look my best. We all do. And yet, I think most of us do, at least. I'm not assuming that all of us do, but we want to feel good about ourselves. And yet at the same time, there are going to be those times where and when we compare ourselves to other people, if we do that, then we cut ourselves in half. There's always going to be somebody thinner, more beautiful, more talented, more polished,
better dressed.
Better dressed. Oh my gosh, I wish I had done that, and especially when you're on a panel, when you're on a panel, you're like, whoo, I feel really good. And you get up on a panel, you're like, oh wow, she looks, right? So there's always going to be somebody that's going to be better looking than you and smarter, sharper, quicker, whatever, more successful. Right. And it's really loving yourself, having that self-worth to know that, what? My value isn't tied up in what I look like. And as much as I want to, I have that spirit of excellence and I want to do the very best. I want the very best me to show up every single time. Right?
Yeah.
But regardless of that, it doesn't devalue me in any way. I fundamentally believe babies don't have to earn their value. They don't have to earn the people's love. When they're born, and you and I were all born at one point, we were loved in that moment. We were perfect. We were valued in that moment, and nothing's changed except our own mindset about it.
That's so true. That's true. So when it comes to the comparison game, if you're doing it, stop it. That's the best advice I can give, is just stop it. Just shut it down in that moment. In coaching, we have structures. So sometimes it's the little green guy on your shoulder. Just grab him off of there, throw him to the ground, and step on him, and just stop it. And I think maybe getting a structure in place that really works for you, that just shuts it down, because it's not helpful at all.
Yeah, and replace it with, look in the mirror rather than saying, oh my gosh, I look so old. Oh my gosh, I look this. Look in the mirror and do one simple thing and saying, I love you.
Yeah. Yeah.
right? You're beautiful.
Or
you're handsome, or whatever.
Or I can work with this.
Or I can work with this. Yeah.
I think that might be an Amy Schumer, and there was probably an expletive in there somewhere, but I can work with this. Yeah, okay. I can work with this. I think if you could even say it, even if you don't believe it, just fake it till you make it. That might be one of those things. You know what? You and I should meet 1 year from now and just kind of revisit this conversation and see if we're both in the same place about different things in our lives. I would love to do that with you, Nicole.
I would love that, Jane. You're so much fun.
Now, I'm pretty sure that people would love to find out more about you. So what would be a good way for them to be in touch with you?
Yeah, so I've got a podcast, which you have been on. Amazing interview that we did that. And so I would encourage them to go to leadersoftransformation.com and check out our podcast. We've had over 170 plus amazing guests on the show, and it's been so much fun. And, you know, and I hopefully it will inspire your audience and also to educate them, give them tips and tools on how they can be a difference maker and make, like you said in the beginning, we all want to do good. We all want to make a difference.
Yeah.
And that's what that podcast is all about.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show with us today. I really, really appreciate your time.
Oh, and thank you for having me. It's an honor. Really.
So fun. And for those of you listening, wealthy speakers, would you please go? I know it's not the easiest thing to find the rating system in the podcast, but please poke around on YouTube, iTunes, or on Google Play or wherever you're listening, and give us a rating if you would please, and a review so that more and more people can get to know. We're building some great momentum here on the Wealthy Speaker Show. And with that, we will say thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you soon, Wealthy Speakers. Bye for now. Thanks for listening to the Wealthy Speaker Show. Please visit speakerlauncher.com for your free Wealthy Speaker audit, and visit speakerlauncher.com/podcast for show notes and many more resources to help you catapult your speaking business. See you soon, Wealthy Speakers.